I've been catching up on classics and I recently read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, first published in 1818, and Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, first published in 1962. Now these are two very different books. One is a horror story and the other one is a non-fiction book about the effects of pesticides on the environment. Okay, that's also a horror story. In fact, both of these books are about the ways in which modern science can interfere with nature. And they have both influenced public perception of science and scientists, and not always in the best way. The image of the lone scientist intent to create something new and possibly dangerous is a trope in pop culture that ultimately originates with Frankenstein. Meanwhile, supermarket and health food stores contain products that supposedly contain no chemicals, which is physically impossible, and it also alludes to a fear of chemicals, like thinking of the word chemical as something bad. That idea, the use of the word chemical in such a negative way, that can be traced back to Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. Carson writes things like, "The chemical war is never won, and the full scope of the dangerous interaction of chemicals is as yet little known." Over and over she talks about very specific harmful chemicals, but keeps using the general term chemicals, which might make you think that all chemicals are harmful. Silent Spring became a hugely popular book among the environmental movement, which itself became hugely popular, to the point where it's now thankfully mainstream to want to save the planet. Thanks to Silent Spring, people became aware of the dangers of pesticide and wildlife. But as a side effect, people also unintentionally picked up the idea that chemical is a bad word. Now, the use of the word chemical as something bad is still quite popular in the same communities where the book Silent Spring was first popular, although it's not necessarily used by the people who read the book firsthand. It's just become part of that same culture. It took on a life of its own. Something similar happened with the Frankenstein-inspired idea of the mad scientist trope. Frankenstein had been around for much longer than Silent Spring, so the effect here is a bit more distorted. And where the mad scientist creatures in cartoons are often these wild-eyed, crazy-haired people, Frankenstein in the book is actually subdued and he's very remorseful about the thing he has created. So part of the current image of how we perceive science and scientists comes from books that were published in 1818 and 1963. It's not the author's fault that people have picked up these ideas in that way. Mary Shelley and Rachel Carson themselves were really reasonable about science if you read the original books. Rachel Carson clearly knows that a chemical can also mean something else, and Mary Shelley's description of scientists is not limited to Frankenstein himself. He also has teachers, and they're much more traditional scientists, and they have debates about what science is supposed to be like. But books get their importance not just from what the authors put in them, but also what readers take from them. Because books have such a big influence on how we perceive the world, including on how we perceive science, I decided to make some videos about the different ways that books and science are related. This was the first one, but there are several more to come. So please subscribe, keep watching, and keep reading!